Hello, digital warriors, and welcome back to the Forge of Unicorns podcast. Today I'm very excited because I am speaking with Ron Ondechek. Ron is the founder of South Highland Ventures, and Ron is specialized in something very, very unique. His company is guiding family office through CEO succession crisis, something that per se is unique. But Ron is even more special because he has a way to find the perfect CEO for these family offices based on studying human beings. And as you know, there is no unicorn without the right people because technology is only a vector. Without further ado, let me welcome Ron. Ron, welcome here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Mike. It's fantastic to be here.
And we will have also a fantastic discussion today. I feel it because we had some pre-discussion with you, Ron, to prepare the podcast. And I was so intrigued about you and your personality, your story. So can you introduce yourself, please, to the audience? Because your story is really, really unique. And I want to hear from your own voice.
No, thank you, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity. So I'm originally from the Pittsburgh area in Pennsylvania in the U.S., and my family worked in the steel mills, and my grandfather was a mechanic. He was self-taught. He saw a Model T driving down the road when he was just a kid, and he was just amazed by it, and he just wanted to learn everything that he could about it. And he was self-taught and eventually worked his way up to work for Richard Petty in NASCAR. And some folks might not be as aware with him. It's not Formula One, but he's the winningest NASCAR driver in history. And he worked for him, and my father worked on the pit crew. And so I grew up around cars and gears and using my head to fix things, but also my hands. But I wasn't as good as using my hands as my father or my grandfather. And so I ended up becoming an engineer, a chemical engineer. I'm a first generation college grad, paid my own way through school. And I was very fortunate to start working in the oil and gas industry for a very large oil and gas company. And I wanted to be like my grandfather. And so I got an MBA at Tulane, and it was one of the best decisions that I made in my life, other than marrying my wife. It was the best decision I ever made. And so, but going through that process of wanting to be like my grandfather, to have a business and to grow a business, I discovered that I can make a bigger impact by serving the entrepreneurs, by serving people that are growing the businesses, by being an investor. And so that's where I started to focus, to being a venture capitalist and also a private equity investor. So I had a couple of other stops along the way, and I was very fortunate to work with some venture capital funds and some growth private equity funds, and work with some fantastic family offices. But I'm very fortunate to be able to work with companies all the way from the initial startup stage all the way through to mid-market and IPO, and understanding how companies grow and how they fail in all of those different stages. And so I'm very blessed and fortunate to be able to serve those entrepreneurs and to be able to take all of that experience and to apply it into what we're doing now, which is helping companies that are struggling with succession. The business that my grandfather had, he had a couple dozen employees employed at his shop, but he lost that business due to succession, and he regretted it to the day he died. He loved that business. And again, that was what fueled me to go get an MBA, to learn how to run a business myself. And so this has been something that has been a part of me, to serve these companies, to serve investors, and to serve the entrepreneurs that are running these companies, and to make them more efficient, and to make a bigger impact, because these companies are all over the world that need help. And we're very fortunate to be in a position to do that.
And I love the word that you use, serve, because I was impressed the first time I have talked with you with the red helmet that you have behind you. And so You told me that you were also a firefighter when you were working in the oil industry. This is the kind of man that we are talking with. So, isn't it true that with serve you mean really the true meaning of serving people, helping them, right? Because your business in this succession is not an easy business because there is the emotional part of a family that is in the mourning process of somebody that they love that is gone. And then there is the business that has to continue, but in a new shape. So, can you explain a bit better what really succession is? Because a lot of people, I guess, they don't know what it is really.
Succession, when I say succession, I mean a company that was started by a founder that has operated the business for several decades. They probably started the company in their 20s, 30s, or even 40s, and the company has grown over that period of time to a point where it's pretty consistent, right? You've kind of reached a level of growth that where you've got your customer base, you've got your profitability, your margins proven, you have a core group of your own team that you're working with, and you're able to serve those employees and those customers. But Father Time starts knocking on your door, and Father Time is undefeated, right? And so it's getting more into the intrinsic parts of the qualitative things about these companies. It's a part of their lives and their families, right? I mean, these companies are the reasons that their kids were able to go to college, right? They're the reasons that that they were able to provide for their families. And in many cases, the founders look at their employees as their children in a way, right? And so there's a lot of intrinsic value with these companies, not just the numbers. These are the margins, and these are the revenues and the companies and the contractual things. Those things are important to run a business, but when you're talking about companies that are struggling with succession, they really want to have their companies continue, but they really want to have the right individual that sees the business in the same ways, right? That is going to take care of their baby, that doesn't just look at it from a numbers perspective, that wants to continue their legacy, and in some ways to have a son or daughter, in some ways to be able to take that business and to take it to that next level. And so there aren't a lot of people that can do that. Individuals that have that kind of talent that can step into these businesses and provide the proper care and respect and grow these businesses, continue that legacy, that already understand the business and the industry. And that's where founders get stuck, where they want to have somebody pick up the business, but they also not only want to pick up the business, they want them to flourish. They want them to have the understanding and the sophistication to get the company to that next level, to continue the legacy, continue to support the customers, continue to support the employees, and grow the business, right? And founders all over the world are struggling with this issue, and in many cases, they're getting forced to either shut down the business, right? They don't have anybody to take the business, so they just close up shop, or they end up selling their company to a partner that they don't want to. And so that is not what we're looking for. We're looking for opportunities to where we can take companies that are struggling with succession, and we have those executives and give them basically everything that they're looking for. We can buy their companies, pay them a fair price for their companies, and provide the executive talent to step in and continue the legacy, not just to keep things the way they are, but to grow it and to provide more to customers, hire more people, and continue the legacy in a way that that they couldn't kind of get it to that next level. And so that's what we mean by succession. And it's really about continuing the legacies and having the right talent and team in order to do that, and to give respect to these companies and their founders and all that we're doing, while creating prosperity and wealth for shareholders, employees, and customers alike.
Thank you for that disclaimer. So now we have the boundaries of the discussion pretty designed and defined. Now, to let people understand in the difficulties, because continuing is a word that you have used more than once, and legacy. Legacy for me as a behavioral engineer is more like a culture, purpose, is something that is in the DNA of the company itself. So, isn't it? Because to me, the legacy of a company is, okay, their product or services, but how they build it. The cohesion between the social team that is doing it is the cultural aspect that nobody can replace. It's not a switch that you can make on and off.
You're right. That's where you're threading the needle, and being able to kind of look at the intrinsic things that make a company perform, right? Because you could have all of the greatest things on paper, but if you don't have the right people in place, you're going to fail, or you're not going to be as productive as you would want to be. And so that's extremely important.
Yes. And this confirms indeed our beliefs that the unicorns are built from the people that are inside. It's like the paradox of the Trojan horse. So the horse was built from the people that they were inside the Trojan horse, and then they have exploited Troya. But the point is, for me, as a behavioral engineer and passionate, these people that are in the company, they need to find the right fit with the new CEO. So to let the digital warriors out there understanding how difficult is this mission, you told me something that was shocking, because you told me that you have roughly, if I remember from my notes, 4,000 intake of potential CEOs that you cap yearly only on 24 companies that you want to do the succession, because you are looking for a high degree of accuracy to find the right CEO, not only a CEO with the right pedigree. Are these the numbers that I took in my notes that are indicating the challenge in your field, and how difficult it is to find a fit on cultural level?
Yes, I mean it is extremely difficult, in the sense that my family office partner and I have teamed up in order to run this recruiting process, and it is extremely detailed, because they're the most important part of this, right? If you don't have the right executive talent, then you're not going to be able to succeed. And so some of the key things that we look for, and we have a process that we use, in order to find certain characteristics in people, and it's just with a lot of interactions, right? I mean, we're human beings, we're not robots, and so it's not as simple as looking at a LinkedIn profile and making a decision. I mean, you really want to be able to understand who they are as an individual, understand more about how they think, how they approach problems, understanding more about what they've done in the past, and they say, it's history not only repeats, but it rhymes, right? And so it's not necessarily, they say past results aren't a good indicator of future results, right? But it gives you a sense of a trend and their style, right? And that's really important. But it's really about trying to find, in the selection process, it's really about trying to find, are they sound technically? Do they understand the markets that they are in? Does the person match up with the resume? And then you get to a point where, are they a good fit for our program? You can have some very brilliant people that are going to be successful, but are they going to be good working with a team? Are they going to work well with the additional resources that we provide to them to be successful? And does their personality fit the work that they've done, right? And these are highly subjective things, and that's why we have a lot of people that are a part of the selection process to make sure that that we're respecting the individual as well. Because I mean, it takes a lot of time and energy and commitment to go through a program like this, and so we need to be very respectful of that. But not everybody is going to be a fit, and so that's kind of the way that we look for and also find those kinds of characteristics in the people. And we are looking for those that have 15 to 20 years of experience in an industry already. So it is a little bit different than with most programs. And we found that it really helps with respect to several things. But one is, being able to hit the ground running, where they already have the industry knowledge and experience with respect to the companies that they want to acquire and become the CEO of. And so that's very helpful in the sense that, because ultimately the seller gets to choose who their successor is. They get to choose who buys their company. In many cases, they turn down offers from private equity. They turn down offers from other people that want to buy their company because they just don't want to sell it to just anybody. They want somebody that's going to continue that legacy and have a clear plan and take care of their baby, right? And so it's very important for them to know that that individual, he or she is going to have that understanding, and they're not going to need a lot of babysitting, right? That they already have a lot of intrinsic knowledge and success in this industry, and that they're going to take the most care with the company and also have the greatest chance for success, for growth. And those are the kinds of things that we look for. There's a lot more that gets involved, right? When I put my investor hat on, right? And I'm like, okay, is this entrepreneur a good fit for this company? Are they going to be well received? Are they going to be able to motivate? What is the culture of the company, and what is their style? Like, these are all very important things that that us as investors that we look at, because you could have two different people that are fantastic from a background and experience perspective, but they might have completely different management styles, and one could be better for one company than another. They could both be successful they look great on paper and I have all the things, but if they have a different working style or the culture of the company needs to be a fit with who they are and what they want to do in order for it to be successful.
What you said contains so many information that we need to process them a bit, because for us maybe it's obvious. It's obvious that when you open the door to let a stranger coming in and taking the leadership of a company, but it could be also to taking a stranger to become a team member of your team, you are at the end injecting into a social ecosystem a personality that could go in fit or go in storming. And so these are important behavioral assessment on personality level that they go beyond pedigree. They go beyond the resume and the curriculum. They go beyond what you achieved before. And so this is an important aspect that I believe not that many people out there, especially in the leadership of other companies, they are taking consideration with their HR departments. And this is lovely, because you have highlighted one of the sources, indeed, to inject mediocrity into your organization without even notice it, because it's a slow bleeding. And in your program, also what you highlighted is the part of transformation. That is something that I love, because a company arrived to a certain point because they had the old CEO the CEO passed away, unfortunately, and now with your program, you are able to find the right fit. That is technically, with the right experience, not only technically, academically. So it's not a professional, was somebody that was fighting in the trenches in the field. And that's also the right personality to have the right fit with the culture of the company. But then the new CEO has to take this legacy by hand and moving it forward, following the trend of digital disruption. And I believe that in your intake process, the kind of companies you get are almost in any kind of industry. So it's even more complicated when you find the right people than understanding the different industry, how they can help the organization to grow following the technology, so the digital disruption, instead of chasing it with the blindness of the market hype. For instance, AI is the new hype. You have to onboard AI to do what? We don't know, but AI is what you have to do. So how much complicated is then the second step when you have found the right individual?
Well, something to keep in mind is these entrepreneurs that are acquiring these companies and becoming the CEOs of these companies, they are agents of change. These are massive changes to these companies. Folks that are very used to working with one individual for 30 years, 50, 70 years in some cases. Maybe it's a second generation company. And then all of a sudden, here comes an outsider that is coming in and needs to be able to not only keep the company doing what it has been doing, but to grow it, right? And so there is a lot of things that is very important as far as like setting the table, setting the expectation, putting a plan together, which is very important. And when you having that plan is something that the entrepreneur discusses with the seller. Like, okay, well, this is what we want to do with your company. This is how we want to do it. Give us let's develop this together, right? Because we typically do not buy 100% of the company. We want the sellers, the founders, to be on board in some form or fashion. And so there needs to be buy-in on, and this is one of the biggest reasons as to why the founders of these companies get to choose who their successors, because they want to have influence on what's going to happen to the company after the acquisition.
So they have skin in the game.
Exactly. And in some cases, these companies don't even have HR departments yet. So it's like, you might, I mean, you have to be following proper regulations and things of that nature, but certain companies that get to a certain scale, HR people are expensive, right? And so they have things in place, but they might have an HR person, but they're also responsible for 2 or other 3 jobs, right? And so that's part of the modernization that the new leader is coming in, where you begin to scale the organization. Again, you're an agent of change. And so you are coming in and taking the most current best practices and incorporating them into the company, right? A lot of these companies haven't even been digitized yet. And so there is a strategic, but also an internal transformation on how things are done. Maybe we could be using different kinds of software to integrate and to be more efficient, improving. Maybe they do adopt some AI software and custom developed AI tools that can be more helpful to the company. And those are things that are coming from the entrepreneur. And so bringing those new things with themselves, with this strategy, is very important. And so we just find that having as much communication with the seller, with the founder, is very, very important. And also having, deadlines, guidelines, and targets and those kinds of things, because the CEO needs to understand what they need to be doing, and they're governed by a board, right? So everybody needs to be aware of, okay, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, but there are going to be changes within the organization. And these are all things that are done up front so that the seller has a full understanding of what is going to happen, why it's going to happen, and to get their buy-in, get as much help as possible to allow the transition for the new CEO to be as easy as possible, so that we don't skip a beat, and this is seen as a positive thing for the company, as opposed to I'm sure that some people might be disappointed, some people might quit, but that's okay. I mean, you bring more people on, and you just keep moving forward. And so, because you need people to be on board with what you're doing in the future vision for the company, while continuing that legacy.
I see a lot of connection here with the concept of emotional trauma and PTSD, so the post-traumatic disorder. Because this is where I see a huge difference between your model and a canonical, let's say, digital transformation. Both, they have a connection with an emotional trauma because there is a change. And so with the change, there is a trauma that is intrinsic in the picture. But typically, who does a digital transformation purchase it as a product. Instead, in what you are doing, the seller is part of the process, has a lot of voice on the matter, and they have the skin in the game. That this is complying with the concept of because they have a connection emotionally, the trauma will be healed faster. And in the process, they will take the right decision because the emotion and the logic will fight together to find the proper answer. Instead, a normal digital transformation as a product, I have an invoice, I pay some money, and I am detached from the problem. And here is the point that indeed in the normal digital transformation, a lot of organizations undergo into what is disengagement and burnout because they are not able to understand, okay, what is really going on the field because they are so detached that they don't see the field. And I love what, with your example, in completely different industries, you are bringing clarity in something that a lot of leaders, they don't see. That they are in a board that is like an ivory tower.
No, that's very true. And I think it's just because of the nature of how large these companies are. These are companies that have like 50 to a couple of hundred employees. And so there aren't a lot of redundancies in these companies. And the you have to wear several different hats with these companies. And so as a result, that's where you get the transparency in that way. And to be a good leader with these kinds of companies, you have to have a deep understanding of each part of the business, and so that you can wear those different hats, but also earn the respect of the people that are working within the company. And as the company grows and kind of reaches that next stage, you can have more figureheads and more industry evangelism and things of that nature, where you're gaining lots and lots of market share. And that's what you typically would see with like a traditional company on your podcast that are unicorns. You're creating your own industry, right? I mean, you're creating the future. I mean, and so that's a very different perspective with those kinds of unicorns. It's very interesting and very important for our society to push those boundaries in that way. But with the companies that we're working with, it's to be able to identify and communicate with people all the way through. And in many cases, our entrepreneurs have worked in these industries their entire careers. And so they've done all of these jobs, working their way up to upper management and just having that next level of leadership that allows them to, okay, well, I remember doing this, and this is what I learned, and that really gets the buy-in from everybody through up and down the organization. And so those are some of the things that make it a little different in that regard. just based off of the size of these companies. And the idea is to grow them, right? But to be able to do that and get everybody on board, it's to be able to look eye to eye with the person on the line and with the person, the engineer or the salesperson, and to get their buy-in and to have the authority to speak on certain things, especially being the new guy or gal that's stepping into this leadership role, and to be able to rally people and get them excited and on board with the new trajectory of the company. That's just very, very important.
But what you brought to light is intriguing indeed. In the unicorns, I love the hypergrowth. And the hypergrowth for me is a vector that amplifies dysfunction or amplifies what is functioning. So what I love on working with unicorns is indeed to understand what was working, what wasn't, why it wasn't. And so I do a research in the research to understand that if an hypergrowth of a unicorn went wrong, which were the reasons that connected me to the perfect eclipse to have the collapse. But in your case, that is more fascinating, is something that is really here in my head that is bouncing since you started this sentence. Because you say, in this kind of companies, because they are small, a CEO needs to have multiple heads. That means to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the leadership is doing multiple roles at the same time, behaving as a CEO, CTO, COO, CFO, and showing people that you are doing also this role. If they don't have even HR, the CEO has to be also the HR department. So they have to do almost everything.
That's not sustainable for the growth. But to start out, they're obviously responsible for those things, but they need to hire an HR person. They need to hire a CFO to have more transparency on the financials, right? To improve governance and things of that nature. So it might be in that way in the beginning, but in order for them to scale, they have to bring more people on board. But the CEO still needs to be able to identify with everybody in the company. It helps them having that experience to hire the right people to do those new roles. And so that's why it's so critical to be able to pick the right entrepreneurs. But as an investor, that's the perspective that we have at South Highland Ventures, because we want to be an asset for the entrepreneur, and we want to be an asset for our investors, so that we're helping along that path and along that journey. And that's one of the things that makes us different, is that we do have a balanced experience as investors, but also operators and advisors. And so when you're working with companies of this size, we believe that we are a better judge of entrepreneurial talent and a better judge of investment opportunities, and also more adept at navigating the market because of our diversified experience bases. And so I just wanted to sneak that in, because yes, the entrepreneur is very important, but also it's also very important for the investors to have that perspective. And sometimes it can get a little bit cliche, where most investors will say, hey, we're here to help our entrepreneurs and everything. It is cliche, but it really is the truth. And so especially for like investors that really understand certain industries, like with a startup, where they can, because you're fighting adoption, you're fighting go to market and finding product market fit, and then being able to grow your market share or to create that market. And to have somebody that has been through that a dozen times is extremely valuable to that entrepreneur. And it's the same thing here, right? Where understanding different types of industries, but also the certain kinds of struggles that companies have, that they face as they continue to grow. And so, and having those multiple perspectives gives us a better foot to stand on, to be able to identify with the entrepreneur, to be able to foresee things better before they happen, right? And to be able to navigate the market that much more efficiently than you would otherwise.
Yes, and I believe that what you just said, you eat three birds with one stone, probably. And let me explain why. So, the point that I was trying to make before is if a CEO is able to dress multiple hats, means that also he has to show the leadership by doing. And so it set the stage for the culture. But in doing this, the social interaction with people in the field is providing him or her with a feedback loop that they receive feedback from the employees. And so it strengthens the social cohesion between the new CEO and the people, and what has to be done in the right way with people that have years of experience on the field, the real labor force, to move and up the leadership to move in the right direction. And this is indeed one of the best principles of coaching. But what you are doing that is even more amazing is you are, as an investor, bringing on the table this hands-on experience where you share your expertise on multiple fields and industries with the CEOs so that they can have a holistic coaching approach that they can take the right decision. They are in charge of taking the decision, but you are more than only an investor, more than an advisory. You behave and the people on the field as well as embedded coaches. And this is something amazing because in our research, what we discover is that typically leaders, they don't have a coach. How you can grow if you don't have a coach and you have to take all the responsibility of taking decisions when you live in an ivory tower far from the labor force? So it's a gamble. In your field, instead, it's different. It's more close. It's more mid-sized industry, probably, or company. But this small size of the social interaction is the strength that a lot of unicorns they lose along the way in their hyper growth. And this is an important factor for me.
Now that's very insightful, because when you're working with a high tech startup that's taking venture, you're creating your own culture, and you're creating your own company, and in some cases you're creating the industry. And a lot of that, it typically comes from the personality of the founders of the company themselves, right? And what we are doing is taking a company that already has a culture, that already has a way of doing things, already has a reputation for quite some time, that's decades old, and we are providing a new executive, a new leader, to influence that culture, right? And so it's more about how can you make it more valuable, right? Like 1+1 = 3 kind of the situation, and where you need to well, sometimes you need to tweak things, right? We don't do turnarounds where we don't come into failing companies and where you have to do massive changes and things of that nature. Those aren't the kinds of companies that we acquire. But if you have a company, you need to have a culture of growth, and to incentivize people properly for that growth. I mean, you want to have the proper respect, and treating people the way that you want to be treated, and those kinds of things. But if the company was okay with just keeping things the way that they were, then that needs to change, because we're growing the company, we're making things more efficient, more effective, and more productive, and those are things that we have to do in the right way, and that's different than what you would see with a startup that turns into a unicorn. And so it's more delicate, I think, because the folks that work in these companies, they come from a variety of backgrounds, right? And they're not, the CEO hasn't handpicked every single person in the company because they're coming in while the company has already been going for quite some time. And so it's a little different in that sense. And so we're very sensitive to that. But that's why there's so much due diligence that's done beforehand, so that the founder, the seller, works with the entrepreneur, to identify, okay, these are the people that, these are the roles that we need in addition. These are the people that we think that might quit. These are the enablers of change within our organization, right? I mean, and these are all things that are thought well out in advance. So it makes the company stronger, right? And it doesn't disrupt the natural flow of the business. And so these are things where excruciating care is taken, and that's where really most of the time is spent, in the diligence processes, particularly with service-oriented companies, to make sure that all those things are accounted for. And there is a great transition from one leader to the next.
The analogy that you provide about the startup and the company under the succession process is indeed intriguing, because as I see it, in a startup, the culture is fluctuating because you have the founder that has to be with a DNA of a unicorn, so with a mindset of relentless dedication for the mission and a purpose that is clearly shared with the people. But then every time that you intake a new element in the team, the culture is fluctuating. And the care that you need in a startup to engineer the culture in the proper way is different, but not really different from what you just described. It's different in the process, but not in the care, because the care is the same care that you need for the successor, because the new CEO needs to have the social fit to go in that ecosystem. It's a social ecosystem of persons that they were working there until the ex-CEO pass away, and then being able to gain their trust. And so it's a care that is different, but the mechanism to observe the culture are exactly the same. And this is fascinating. It's really fascinating. I have a question more for you, because your system is deeply intertwined with behavioral engineering. And your process, how you do the due diligence, is really intriguing and really close to what we do in order to measure the behavioral markers of a company, how the company is behaving as a social environment. Have you done succession of a company that they were doing software?
That's a great question. We have not. Usually, not yet. But usually, I mean, software companies aren't that old in general, right? And software changes so much. I mean, with just even with the coding languages, right, and how software is developed and created has like changed dramatically just within the last 10 years. I mean, there are some companies that that have legacy products and that have internal development and things of that nature that they can be struggling with succession maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. But software is a tricky one in that regard because there is so much change. And to be sincere, I mean, companies that are in the software, like with the SaaS model and things, it's very competitive. And so we tend to focus on companies that have been overlooked for quite some time because of their size and because of the succession issues and the work, the hard work that needs to be put in order to modernize these companies and get them to that level of sophistication where they can be on par with their competitors and their larger peer groups. And so those are some of the reasons why. I mean, we like to work with software companies to help our companies perform better, to help them grow, to find the right software that's that's a fit for the company, that can, as a customer, that can improve efficiency and provide more transparency. But also, the companies are also at that stage where, they do have budgets, so they can work and create custom things that would make them more valuable, that would make their lives a little easier. They don't have tens of millions of dollars of budgets, right? That a lot of software companies are targeting for themselves, but they are profitable, and typically in a 2 to 10 million annual EBITDA range. They are profitable and they do have budgets, but they're not super large budgets. But they are budgets that to where they can work with software companies to develop things that could help them become more valuable and more efficient.
The point I ask you this is for one reason. A lot of unicorns are software driven. A lot of investors, they are gambling, literally, in my opinion.
Software and IP driven, for sure. Yeah.
A lot of investors, they are literally gambling on software and the new unicorns. But if we would have to assess the markers of a company and a CEO in the successful process that are the right fit together to go ahead and innovate in this company, when we will go to the technical part, the engineering excellence, then it will be a very, very vague concept, because nobody knows what software engineering excellence is. And in your story, your grandfather and your father, they were all into the mechanic, high-performing racing team of NASCAR. As you know, I had the pleasure and luxury to be in the Formula One. My brother is still working in Ferrari. So I have witnessed what is engineering masterpiece. And I've replicated it in years of experiments in IT. But then investors, when you ask them, what is engineering excellence in IT? We don't know. It's a mystery.
It changes so much. It's like when you get into like manufacturing and things of that nature, it is different in the sense that you have 10, 15, 20 year investment horizons where you have to be able to pay off the equipment. You have to pay off your capex and have your long-term economics in place, right? Having your 5-year budget plans and even longer than that. And so when you get into kinds of manufacturing, but when you're getting into software, it's constantly changing and constantly developing. And so I think that that's why it's so important for these companies to evolve, right? And for them to become more competitive, because once you increase the size of these companies, you're going to have larger competitors, and you need to have the right kind of protection with your company, right? And technology is one of the best ways to do that, and to be able to and to find the right software, the right technology, where other people might be afraid to do those new things, I think is a big advantage. And one other point that I wanted to make is it's like the companies that we're investing in aren't unicorns in the classical valuation sense, where they're reaching the $1 billion valuation. But the markets that we work in, they are. So succession is an over $10 trillion problem in the United States alone. But it's a global phenomenon. And so we are working with these kinds of companies all over the world, and entrepreneurs that want to help these companies and investors all over the world. And so collectively, we are embarking on a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, because that's the scale and the size of the problem, right? And to have a solution that is commensurate in size with the opportunity, with the problem, is very important, because you want to be able to help as many as you can along the way, to preserve and grow jobs, right? To preserve and grow competition, and those are the things that you can be successful with investing. But it also improves the overall human condition, right? Employing more people and giving them more opportunities and driving down prices is an important thing for everybody. But these companies also need to be able to adapt into those CEOs and investors to be agents of change within these companies, so that they can reach that next level of performance and efficiency.
I love your point, and is echoing one thought that I have since long time ago. Software is too fast. In some countries in Europe, you have a cost amortization if you do real estate. So you need a venue, you purchase the venue or the land, and then you build your venue. In some countries in Europe, you have a cost amortization on real estate of 20 years. So this is the horizon that you can have in a normal traditional industry. But in a investment in a IT sector, typically the exit is in 2-3 years maximum. That is 10% of the average on a traditional industry. And the funny part is this speed also associated with the same amount of speed in quantitative way of humans? Because if we return to our origins of motorsport, I have a lot of people that they are doing motorsport and they are racing. So they have their racing division, where typically you have a few guys that are doing the aluminium welding, the R&D, and then they are doing all the stuff that are connected to create motorsport component to build your car. If you have a racing team, you don't have 1,000 employees. But if you have software, how many employees do you have? More than in a racing team. Now, is an oxymoron this? Because to me, looks like, looking at the engineering excellence in the motorsport, that if you need 10 engineers to build software, means that we build software with an efficiency that is terrible, is awful. Because in an engineering team that does motorsport, I need one engineer that is building all the stuff that are needed to create the motor. Why we need 10 software engineers if software has a time to invest and disinvest that is 10% of a traditional industry? So this to me looks a terrible oxymoron, and is probably the indicator that IT, because it doesn't have any standard, is a highly inflated market where detonating the balloon and getting nothing out of the investment is typically the norm. Am I wrong, or do you feel the same?
No, that's a really good question, and there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think that when you're working with a software startup, I mean, it fits certain profiles, right? Like once it hits a certain MRR, right, or ARR, then certain investors will take those risks, and then depending upon the need for the software, but really also the talent of the team that is developing the software. That's where most of the value is in these companies, particularly in the early stages before they start generating revenue. But changing software is hard. Investors like that, and companies like that too, right? So if you're able to develop a trajectory in 2 to 3 years, and you're able to develop a platform, and then continuously develop more functionality and be able to upsell, then you can get on that life cycle of software use, because once it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort for the customer to change what they're doing and to use that software, and that's where the value has to be so obvious that they're willing to take on that pain, right? That change, even though like software isn't necessarily patentable in many ways, right? It's how it works for you and how the efficiency that you gain, but also it's once you get into it, it's okay. How hard is it to change, right? And because you don't want to be changing every year, you want to, as a customer, you want to get your money's worth and to extract the full value of what you're doing. There are some similarities to our companies in the sense that, like with the software, you're really you're looking at the trajectory of revenue and also of market share. And with what we're doing, because profitability isn't as important for a company at that stage, but for our companies it is. But we have to be able to set a new trend of growth. So instead of it being like 5 to 10% of growth every year, with these new improvements and new leadership and modernizations of these companies, we want to have a different trajectory, right? And then we want to repeat that trajectory, and then that is where people are going to be more interested in the company to provide liquidity for the investor. And so the harvest time period is usually like a 3 to 5 year time frame where we hold before we sell out our position, and that is maybe a little longer than software companies in that sense. But 3 years, can 3 years, you're still on that track. But especially if you have a software company that's on an IPO track, then you're definitely on the same kind of time frame. So like, but those don't happen very often. I mean, some do, and that's great, but it's not every one. But to kind of get towards the end of your question, I think that that's the debate of AI, right? And seeing like how much of AI is going to be able to do the work that dozens of other software can currently do. And so I think that that's the debate that we're having right now, and I think the jury is still out on that, and there's a lot of debate of whether even SaaS as a model can flourish with AI, and those are debates that people way smarter than me can have, and so you need to embrace the change, right? Like you need to be able to take measured risks with the companies that we have, but not take wild risks, but to be able to keep your eyes open and see what's going on in your world, and to make smart adjustments that can help you help your company and make it more valuable in the future. So it's not just an EBITDA comp, right? You want to be able to have a more defensible position as a company to make it even more valuable for the investors and the group or person or whomever is going to purchase the company next, because they want that company for 10, 15 more years, right? And so to make their investment more valuable in buying these companies. And so that's a fantastic question, and that's the perspective that we have in working with software and that kind of technology development.
That is intriguing indeed, because again, it's showcasing how looking only at financial indicators is misleading people to take decisions that are myope, because they don't see the holistic picture of how the world is changing, and the software is changing to a speed that is not absolutely on another degree of magnitude than on a traditional industry. And also, they don't take in consideration the human aspect, because all this speed of change means that the people are under constant stress of change. That is per se a trauma. And so it's indeed something that I see every day in working with software companies, and I don't see almost ever in traditional organization. Traditional organization has the problem to understand why software is so expensive. This is a different kind of shoot. But I see that the time is moving too fast, unfortunately. And do you have anything else that you want to share with our digital warriors?
I I just want to say thank you for everybody that's listening. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Mike, and your audience. And I think that this is it's a little different, but we're unicorns in a different sense, and more people. Like I really enjoy the discussion about the people because that's really the core the core asset to what we're doing. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the most important asset, right? But it's more focused on like for our model and what we're doing, and because we're replacing people and inspiring people, and without that you can't be successful. And so I'm just thankful for the opportunity, and look forward to continuing our conversation online, and people should feel comfortable in reaching out to me if they would like.
Thank you, Ron. And yes, guys, please, if you feel that you are a great CTO that can help Ron, please go to Ron and apply for his program. I am pretty sure that Ron can help you to find the right industry and the company to become the new CEO. And I'm really happy of this discussion, Ron, because as one friend, Alex, another investor from Germany, he said to me a long time ago, the most important asset of an organization are their working assets, people. And this is indeed something that every investor, board, C executive, they should think when they take decision. Because in a lot of organizations, the feedback loop with the humanity and the empathy is unfortunately broken. And with this last message of CEO, please start to be more empathic with your people. I want to salute everybody. Thank you, Ron, again for the fantastic discussion.
Welcome. Thank you.
And talk to you soon online, and maybe, who knows, in US look into some F1 or NASCAR race. Who knows?
That'd be fantastic. Thank
Ron,
you.
thank you so much. Listener, please smash comments below. Tell us what you think about, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and please remember to subscribe to the Forge of Unicorns to stay up to date with our latest episodes.